Hello, this is Morale Bernard with Study Coach UK channel and the story of Secret Adversary. Last words on Secret Adversary was that any more facts about that American chap for me? I'm afraid not. Is it important to find out who he was? So, last words. Okay, and by the way, please subscribe to the channel and please share. Thank you very much. So I will continue with this wonderful story of Secret Adversary and find out what's happened to Tuppence. Oh, I know who he was, said Sir James easily. I can't prove it yet, but I know. The other two asked no questions. They had an instinct that it would be mere waste of breath. But what I don't understand, said the Prime Minister suddenly, is how that photograph came to be in Mr. Hershmeyer's drawer. Perhaps it never left it, suggested the lawyer gently. But the bogus Inspector Brown. Ah, said Sir James thoughtfully. He rose to his feet. I mustn't keep you. Go on with the affairs of the nation. I must get back to my case. 2 days later, Julius Hershmeyer returned from Manchester. A note from Tommy lay on his table. Dear Hershmeyer, sorry I lost my temper. In case I don't see you again, goodbye. I've been offered a job in the Argentine and might as well take it. Yours, Tommy Beresford. A peculiar smile lingered for a moment on Julia's face. He threw the letter into the wastepaper basket. The darned fool, he murmured. After ringing up Sir James, Tommy's next procedure was to make a call at South Audley Mansions. He found Albert discharged in his professional duties and introduced himself without more ado as a friend of Tuppence's. Albert unbent immediately. Things have been very quiet here lately, he said wistfully. Hope the young lady's keeping well, sir. That's just the point, Albert. She's disappeared. You don't mean as the crooks have got her? They have. In the underworld? No, dash it all, in this world. It's an expression, sir, explained Albert. At the pictures, the crooks always have a restaurant in the underworld. But do you think as they've done her in, sir? I hope not. By the way, have you by any chance an aunt? A cousin, a grandmother, or any other suitable female relation who might be represented as being likely to kick the bucket? A delighted grin spread slowly over Albert's countenance. I'm on, sir. My poor aunt, what lives in the country, has been mortal bad for a long time, and she's asking to me with her dying breath. Tommy nodded approval. Can you report this in the proper quarter and meet me at Charing Cross in an hour's time? I'll be there, sir. You can count on me. As Tommy had judged, the fateful Albert proved an invaluable ally. The two took up their quarters at the inn in Gatehouse. To Albert fell the task of collecting information. There was no difficulty about it. Astley Priors was the property of a Dr. Adams. The doctor no longer practiced, had retired, the landlord believed, but he took a few private patients. Here the good fellow tapped his forehead knowingly. Balmy ones, you understand. The doctor was a popular figure in the village, subscribed freely to all the local sports. A very pleasant, affable gentleman. Been there long? Oh, a matter of 10 years or so, might be longer. Scientific gentleman. He was professors and people often came down from town to see him. Anyway, it was a gay house, always visitors. In the face of all this volubility, Tommy felt doubts. Was it possible that this genial, well-known figure could be in reality a dangerous criminal? His life seemed to open and above board, no hint of sinister doings. Suppose it was all a gigantic mistake? Tommy felt a cold chill at the thought. Then he remembered the private patients, balmy ones. He inquired carefully if there was a young lady amongst them describing tuppence. But nothing much seemed to be known about the patients. They were seldom seen outside the grounds. A guarded description of Annette also failed to provoke recognition. Astley Priors was a pleasant red brick edifice surrounded by well-wooded grounds which effectually shielded the house from observation from the road. On the first evening, Tommy, accompanied by Albert, explored the grounds. Owing to Albert's insistence, they dragged themselves along painfully on their stomachs, thereby producing a great deal more noise than if they had stood upright. In any case, these precautions were totally unnecessary. The grounds, like those of any other private house after nightfall, seemed untenanted. Tommy had imagined a possible fierce watchdog. Albert's fancy ran to a puma or a tame cobra. But they reached a shrubbery near the house quite unmolested. The blinds of the dining room window were up. There was a large company assembled round the table. The port was passing from hand to hand. It seemed a normal, pleasant company. Through the open window, scraps of conversation floated out disjointedly on the night air. It was a heated discussion on county cricket. Again, Tommy felt that cold chill of uncertainty. It seemed impossible to believe that these people were other than they seemed. Had he been fooled once more? The fair, bearded, spectacled gentleman who sat at the head of the table looked singularly honest and normal. Tommy slept badly that night. The following morning, the indefatigable Albert, having cemented an alliance with a greengrocer's boy, took the latter's place and ingratiated himself with a cook at Malthouse. He returned with the information that she was undoubtedly one of the crooks, but Tommy mistrusted the vividness of his imagination. Questioned, he could adduce nothing in support of his statement except his own opinion that she wasn't the usual kind. You could see that at a glance. The substitution being repeated, much to the pecuniary advantage of the real greengrocer's boy, on the following day. Albert brought back the first piece of hopeful news. There was a French young lady staying in the house. Tommy put his doubts aside. Here was confirmation of his theory. But time pressed. Today was the 27th. The 29th was the much talked of the Labour Day, about which all sorts of rumours were running riot. Newspapers were getting agitated. Sensational hints of a Labour coup d'etat were freely reported. The government said nothing. It knew and was prepared. There were rumours of dissension among the Labour leaders. They were not of one mind. The more far-seeing among them realised that what they proposed might well be a death blow to the England that at heart they loved. They shrank from the starvation and misery a general strike would entail, and were willing to meet the government halfway. But behind them were subtle, insistent forces at work, urging the memories of old wrongs, depreciating the weakness of half and half measures, fomenting misunderstandings. Tommy felt that, thanks to Mr. Carter, he understood the position fairly accurately. With the fatal document in the hands of Mr. Brown, public opinion would swing to the side of the Labour extremist and revolutionist. Failing that, the battle was an even chance. The government, with a loyal army and police force behind them, might win, but at a cost of great suffering. But Tommy nourished another and a preposterous dream. With Mr. Brown unmasked and captured, he believed, rightly or wrongly, that the whole organisation would crumble ignominiously and instantaneously. The strange permeating influence of the unseen chief held it together. Without him, Tommy believed an instant panic would set in, and the honest men left to themselves, an 11th hour reconciliation would be possible. This is a one-man show, said Tommy to himself. The thing to do is to get hold of the man. It was partly in furtherance of this ambitious design that he had requested Mr. Carter not to open the sealed envelope. The draft treaty was Tommy's bait. Every now and then he was aghast at his own presumption. How dared he think that he had discovered what so many wiser and clever men had overlooked? Nevertheless, he stuck tenaciously to his idea. That evening, he and Albert once more penetrated the grounds of Astley Priors. Tommy's ambition was somehow or other to gain admission to the house itself. As they approached cautiously, Tommy gave a sudden gasp. On the second floor, someone was standing between the window and the light in the room, threw her silhouette on the blind. It was one Tommy would have recognized anywhere. Tuppence was in that house. He clutched Albert by the shoulder. Stay here. When I begin to sing, watch that window. He retreated hastily to a position on the main drive and began in a deep roar, coupled with an unsteady gait, the following ditty. I am a soldier, a jolly British soldier. You can see that I am a soldier by my feet. It had been a favourite on the gramophone in Tuppence's hospital days. He did not doubt but that she would recognise it and draw her own conclusions. Tommy had not a note of music in his voice, but his lungs were excellent. The noise he produced was terrific. Presently, an unimpeachable butler, accompanied by an equally unimpeachable footman, issued from the front door. The butler remonstrated with him. Tommy continued to sing, addressing the butler affectionately as dear old Whiskers. The footman took him by one arm, the butler by the other. They ran him down the drive and nearly out of the gate. The butler threatened him with the police if he intruded again. It was beautifully done, soberly and with perfect decorum. Anyone would have sworn that the butler was a real butler, the footman a real footman. Only as it happened, the butler was a Whittington. Tommy retired to the inn and waited for Albert's return. At last that worthy made his appearance. "Well?" cried Tommy eagerly. "It's all right. While there was a running of you out of the window open and something was chucked out." He handed a scrap of paper to Tommy. It was wrapped round a letter weight. On the paper were scrawled 3 words: "Tomorrow, same time." "Good egg," cried Tommy. "We're getting going." I wrote a message on a piece of paper, wrapped it round a stone, and chucked it through the window, continued Albert breathlessly. Tommy groaned. "Your zeal will be the undoing of us, Albert. What did you say?" "Said we was a-staying at the inn, if she could get away, to come there and croak like a frog." "She'll know that's you," said Tommy with a sigh of relief. "Your imagination runs away with you, you know, Albert. Why, you wouldn't recognize a frog croaking if you heard it." Albert looked rather crestfallen. "Cheer up," said Tommy. "No harm done. That butler's an old friend of mine. I bet he knew who I was, though he didn't let on. It's not their game to show suspicion. That's why we found it fairly plain sailing. They don't want to discourage me altogether. On the other hand, they don't want to make it too easy. I'm a pawn in their game, Albert. That's what I am. You see, if the spider lets the fly walk out too easily, the fly might suspect it was a put-up job. Hence the usefulness of that promising youth, Mr. T. Beresford, who blundered in just at the right moment for them. But later, Mr. T. Beresford had better look out." Tommy retired for the night in a state of some elation. He had elaborated a careful plan for the following evening. He felt sure that the inhabitants of Astley Priors would not interfere with him up to a certain point. It was after that Tommy proposed to give them a surprise. About 12 o'clock, however, his calm was rudely shaken. He was told that someone was demanding him in the bar. The applicant proved to be a rude-looking carter, well coated with mud. "Well, my good fellow, what is it?" asked Tommy. "Might this be for you, sir?" The carter held out a very dirty folded note, on the outside of which was written, "Take this to the gentleman at the inn near Astley Priors. He will give you 10 shillings. The handwriting was twopences. Tommy appreciated her quick-wittedness in realizing that he might be staying at the inn under an assumed name. He snatched at it. "That's all right." The man withheld it. "What about my 10 shillings?" Tommy hastily produced a 10-shilling note, and the man relinquished his find. Tommy unfastened it. Dear Tommy, I knew it was you last night. Don't go this evening. They'll be lying in wait for you. They're taking us away this morning. I heard something about Wales, Holyhead, I think. I'll drop this on the road if I get a chance. Annette told me how you'd escape. Buck up. Yours, twopence. Tommy raised a shout for Albert before he had even finished pursuing this characteristic epistle. Pack my bag. We're off. Yes, sir. The boots of Albert could be heard racing upstairs. Holyhead! Did that mean that? After all? Tommy was puzzled. He read on slowly. The boots of Albert continued to be active on the floor above. Suddenly, a second shout came from below. Albert, I'm a damn fool. Unpack that bag. Yes, sir. Tommy smoothed out the note thoughtfully. Yes, a damn fool, he said softly. But so's someone else. And at last, I know who it is. In his suite at Claridge's, Cremlin reclined on a couch and dictated to his secretary in Styblian Russian. Presently the telephone at the secretary's elbow purred, and he took up the receiver, spoke for a minute or two, then turned to his employer. Someone below is asking for you. Who is it? He gives the name of Mr. Julius P. Hershemeyer. Hershemeyer, repeated Kremlin thoughtfully. I have heard that name before. His father was one of the steel kings of America, explained the secretary, whose business it was to know everything. This young man must be a millionaire several times over. The other's eyes narrowed appreciatively. You had better go down and see him, Ivan. Find out what he wants. The secretary obeyed, closing the door noiselessly behind him. In a few minutes he returned. He declines to state his business, says it is entirely private and personal, and that he must see you. A millionaire several times over, murmured Kremlin. Bring him up, my dear Ivan. The secretary left the room once more and returned, escorting Julius. Monsieur Kremlin, said the latter abruptly. The Russian, studying him attentively with his pale, venomous eyes, bowed. Pleased to meet you, said the American. I've got some very important business I'd like to talk over with you, if I can see you alone. He looked pointedly at the other. My secretary, Monsieur Gerber, for whom I have no secrets. Well, that may be so, but I have, said Julius dryly. So I'd be obliged if you'd tell him to scoot. Ivan, said the Russian softly, perhaps you would not mind retiring into the next room. The next room won't do, interrupted Julius. I know these ducal suites, and I want this one plumb empty except for you and me. Send him round to a store to buy a pennyworth of peanuts. Though not particularly enjoying the American's free and easy manner of speech, Kremlin was devoured by curiosity. Will your business take long to state? Might be an all-night job, if you caught on. Very good, Ivan. I shall not require you again this evening. Go to the theatre. Take a night off. Thank you, Your Excellency. The secretary bowed and departed. Julius stood at the door watching his retreat. Finally, with a satisfied sigh, he closed it and came back to his position in the centre of the room. Now, Mr. Hershmeyer, perhaps you will be so kind as to come to the point. I guess that won't take a minute, drawled Julius. Then, with an abrupt change of manner, hands up, or I shoot. For a moment, Kremenin stared blindly into the big automatic. Then, with almost comical haste, he flung up his hands above his head. In that instant, Julius had taken his measure. The man he had to deal with was an abject physical coward. The rest would be easy. This is an outrage, cried the Russian in a high, hysterical voice. An outrage? Do you mean to kill me? Not if you keep your voice down. Don't go edging sideways toward that bell. That's better. What do you want? Do nothing rashly. Remember, my life is of the utmost value to my country. I may have been maligned. I reckon, said Julius, that the man who let daylight into you would be doing humanity a good turn. But you needn't worry anyway. I'm not proposing to kill you this trip. That is, if you're reasonable. The Russian quailed before the stern menace in the other's eyes. He passed his tongue over his dry lips. What do you want? Money? No, I want Jane Finn. Jane Finn? I never heard of her. You're a darned liar. You know perfectly who I mean. I tell you, I've never heard of the girl. And I tell you, retorted Julius, that little Willie here is just hopping mad to go off. The Russian wilted visibly. You wouldn't dare. Oh, yes, I would, son. Kremenin must have recognized something in the voice that carried conviction, for he said sullenly, Well, granted I do know who you mean. What of it? You will tell me now, right here, where is she? Where she is to be found? Kremenin shook his head. I daren't. Why not? I daren't. You ask an impossibility. Afraid, eh? Of who? Mr. Brown? Ah, that tickleth you up. There is such a person, then. I doubted it, and the mere mention of him scares you stiff. I have seen him, said the Russian slowly, spoken to him face to face. I did not know it until afterwards. He was one of a crowd. I should not know him again. Who is he really? I do not know, but I know this. He's a man to fear. He'll never know, said Julius. He knows everything, and his vengeance is swift. Even I, Kremenin, would not be exempt. Then you won't do as I ask you. You ask an impossibility. Sure, that's a pity for you, said Julius cheerfully, but the world in general will benefit. He raised the revolver. Stop, shrieked the Russian. You cannot mean to shoot me. Of course I do. I've always heard you revolutionists held like cheap, but it seems there's a difference when it's your own life in question. I gave you just one chance of saving your dirty skin, and that you wouldn't take. They would kill me. Well, said Julius pleasantly, it's up to you. But I'll just say this. Little Willie here is a dead third, and if I was you, I'd take a sporting chance with Mr. Brown. You will hang if you shoot me, muttered the Russian irresolutely. No, stranger, that's where you're wrong. You forget the dollars. A big crowd of solicitors will get busy, and they'll get some high-brow doctors on the job, and the end of it all will be that they'll say my brain was unhinged. I shall spend a few months in a quiet sanatorium. My mental health will improve. The doctors will declare me sane again, and all will end happily for little Julius. I guess I can bear a few months' retirement in order to rid the world of you, but don't you kid yourself, I'll hang for it. The Russian believed him. Corrupt himself, he believed implicitly in the power of money. He had read of American murder trials running much on the lines indicated by Julius. He had bought and sold justice himself. This virile young American with the significant drawling voice and the whip hand of him. I'm going to count 5, Julius. And I guess if you let me get past 4, you needn't worry any about Mr. Brown. Maybe he'll send some flowers to the funeral, but you won't smell them. Are you ready? I'll begin. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Russian interrupted with a shriek. Do not shoot me. I will do all you wish. Julius lowered the revolver. I thought you would hear sense. Where is the girl? At Gatehouse, in Kent. Astley Priors, the place is called. Is she a prisoner there? She's not allowed to leave the house, though it's safe enough really. The little fool has lost her memory. Curse her. That's been annoying for you and your friends, I reckon. What about the other girl? The one you decoyed away over a week ago. She's there too, said the Russian sullenly. That's good, said Julius. Isn't it all panning out beautifully? And a lovely night for the run. What run? Demanded Crepelid, with a stare. Down to Gatehouse, sure. I hope you're fond of motoring. What do you mean? I refuse to go. Now don't get mad. You must see I am not such a kid as to leave you here. You'd ring up your friends on that telephone first thing. He observed the fall on the other's face. You see, you've got it all fixed. No, sir. You're coming along with me. This, your bedroom, next door here. Walk right in. Little Willie and I will come behind. Put on a thick coat, that's right. Fur-lined. And you a socialist. Now we're ready. We walk downstairs and out through the hall to where my car's waiting. And don't you forget, I've got you covered every inch of the way. I can shoot just as well through my coat pocket. One word, or a glance even, at one of those livered menials, and there'll sure be a strange face in the sulphur and brimstone works. Join me, Morale, for the next video of The Secret Adversary. Join me for the next video of Secret Adversary. I'll see you then. Bye for now. Bye.